Today is April 23rd, 2021 at 1 o'clock p.m. I am Ben Schramm, and with me is Gabe Peterson, and we're here to interview Orville Edward Konop. All right, so let's get started. So to start things off, Grandpa, do you want to describe where you're from and like where you were born?
Well, as you said, my name is Orville Edward Konop. I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin on December 8th, 1938, and that would put me at 82 years old. And I live now in Alloway, which is a suburb of Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we've been living here for some odd 59 years. And I've been retired for close to 30 years, 28 or 30 years. So basically, that's about who I am. I'm married, have 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild, and my wife is Karen. Other than that, what else?
Do you want to describe like where you grew up? Because I remember from the pre-interview you mentioned how you grew up in like Stangelville and like Franklin area.
Yes. I grew up in the Stangesville area, which is in town of Franklin, and that would be in Kewaunee County, Wisconsin. I lived there up until I was 21 years old, and I lived with my dad, who was a businessman, and with my brother and uncle and an aunt that stayed with us. I grew up in the Stangesville area. My mother and dad were divorced, and my father had to take care of my brother and myself. And my father, knowing that he could not handle it alone, he asked his brother and wife to come and live with us and with our family, and which they did. They lived with us for some 20 plus years. I could give you, my dad was, like I said, a businessman, tavern owner. The tavern business was the bar, a bar that he had. My dad's brother and uncle, which was my uncle and aunt. My uncle worked in construction, and my aunt Emily, she was more or less a homebody that did his chores and took care of the house or the bar,
Yeah.
whatever. Mhm.
Did like the line of work that your parents that they were in, did it like influence you in any way for your future? Or like I know how you were gonna be an occupation or like some sort of engineer. Like did any of that influence you? Like what your parents were doing?
Well, considering parents, I wasn't uh, led by what my dad did. He owned a tavern at that time, which I had no doubt had to help him out with taking care of it at times, cleaning and so on. But I was more influenced by my uncle that was living with us. He worked in the construction field, and I think I kind of followed that path a little bit, which I did. He kind of got me my job in construction, and I was in it for a number of years. And as the job entailed of me joining the union, which was the operating engineers, and I have been a member of the operating engineers for some 50 some years, 51 years, up until now.
Okay, so what was the first school you attended to, and like what was school like back at that time?
Well, the first school I attended to was what they called the Woodlawn Graded School. And just to comment on the school itself, it was a one-room school. We had about 30 students, and the grades were like kindergarten through 8th grade. My graduating class in 8th grade consisted of 5 students, 3 boys and 2 girls. We went to school, of course, in the school year, we walked to school, which was about a half a mile away. And we either walked or took our bicycle. The school had, I can just tell you some stories about the school. It did not have inside toilets, did not have running water. Uh, it was all the school. We had to bring in the water. We had a well with a pump, and always the older kids would have to get the water and put it in a cooler, pour it in the cooler, and then you just took the water out of the cooler when you wanted it. As far as heat, we had a potbelly stove. The stove was always fired with wood, and during the winter months, one of the older boys, at, at which time I was one of those older boys when I was in eighth grade, we had the responsibility of getting into the school at about 7 in the morning or earlier, getting the kindling to start the fire, and we would have to start the fire in the stove and make sure that the stove was heating properly by the time the rest of the kids, the teacher came and the rest of the students. So it was a little hassle. The playground area consisted of a 3 swing sets and a teeter-totter. And basically, what we did for recess time, we played ball, uh, either played ball or ran around or played ante over, which you never knew what it was. It means throwing a ball over the roof of the school, and you'd have to catch it on the other side. If you missed it, you lost a point, and you never knew where the ball was coming because you could throw it from any distance of the roof. So we did things like that. Across the street, not the street, but across the road, it was of course a gravel road. Was it woods, and at times the teacher would let us go into the woods, and the farmer that owned the woods would have no objection to having us do that. The teacher did not travel, did not have a car. At least one of my teachers did not have a car. So she stayed, during the week, she would stay at the neighbor, which was the farmer, only about a quarter mile away, and she would walk that every day to the farmhouse and live there. Um, the school is no longer there. The school is tore down. It was an all brick building. Like I said, no outhouses. And then they had a little woodshed in there, which we were always told that if we didn't behave, they'll take us to the woodshed. You know what that meant. So we had to behave. Well, anyway, that's about the story of Woodlawn School, being a half a mile away, walking the distance. And the story is that we always tell is that we walked to school. It was all uphill there and back. You didn't get it. Go ahead.
All right. Well, you mentioned how you like did some activities like in school, like just playing with friends and whatnot, but for the community that you lived in, did you like participate on any like baseball teams or like any rec sports or anything like that?
No, not really. Being in a country atmosphere, farming area, most of the boys of the family had to work on the farm, of course. My dad being in a saloon or tavern, that business that he ran, I worked out on the neighbor's farm. He hired me, and as far as recreation, the recreation that we had probably was just on the weekend, probably on Sundays, where us boys would get together and have a game of softball or baseball. And other than that, that's about all we did. I can remember Sunday afternoons, we would go to the village of Stangelville, which was a mile away from my home, and we would meet there and we would have a little baseball team and we would play ball. And then after ball, there was 3 other taverns or one right across the street from the church, and then we would take our quarter that we had in our pocket, and we would go into the tavern, and then we would purchase a quart of soda, orange soda, cream soda, or whatever, and then we would come back out and sit around and drink our soda. So other than that, most of the boys and girls had to work on the farm during the week. So we didn't have the privilege of going swimming or going and playing basketball or anything like that. We actually worked. And when we did work, we were usually paid $1 a day. We worked on the farm for $1 a day. And at the end of the school year, at the end of the vacation year, before we had to go back to school, the farmer would pay us per day. He paid us for 30 days out of the month. So actually we had to pay of maybe $60 for working all summer. That's basically it. I worked around my dad's tavern. Of course, he had to cut the grass and all things like that. And that's how we spent our summers and our activities during our school days.
So you kind of mentioned that you like worked with your dad and the tavern, but was there anything else you did with your family, like during your childhood?
Well, as far as family was concerned, our family was my brother, my uncle, and my aunt, and my dad. Of course, my dad had to spend all of his time with his business. But with my aunt and uncle, we were able to go as a family. We always considered my uncle and aunt as my mother and dad also. I never called them uncle or anything like that. It was, as describing them as a dad and mother, and they described us. They never had any children of their own, so they described us as my brother and I as their sons. So a lot of times we would go on family picnics, and that was the big thing with my livelihood when I was growing up. We had family picnics. I could really say that we probably had one every weekend, and that was always on Sunday. That was always in a park. They would everybody would bring something. They would get a half a barrel of beer or whatever, and sit around and talk and just have fun singing, and things like that. And of course, the more they drank, the more they sang. But that's the way it was. That's how we got together as family. My dad had 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and mainly most of them lived in the same area, except for one that lived in Chicago. Of course, when the one from Chicago came, then you really had a celebration. But anyway, it was kind of a gala picnic, and we would bring the food and stuff, and have hamburgers and whatever. And they always brought what we call a sauerkraut delicacy, which we called Plutsky in Czech, and it was like a little wafer, not a little wafer, but a wafer that was made with sauerkraut, flour, and dough. And we would have kolaches. Now, kolaches was another Czech dish which was a round dough with fruit in the middle, and they called it a kolache. We would have that, and we would have just a good old time till it got dark and everybody left, and somebody would say, "Hey, I'll plan the party for next week." And that's how it went. Of course, we went also. If we didn't go to that, we would go bowling. That was another activity which we did as a family, and which was always a good time.
Okay, so since you mentioned like St. Lawrence Catholic Church in the
Yes.
preview, like, do you want to like explain like what you remember about it, being that it's like a historical site in Wisconsin today? So do you want to just like explain like the importance of it to you and like what you remember about it?
Well, the important to me was that when I was born Lutheran. I was baptized Lutheran, and it wasn't up until my mother and dad got a divorce, and my dad had custody of us 2 boys, and we started living in the Stangelville area, that we my uncle and aunt were Catholic, and of course my dad was too. And he wanted us to be Catholics also. So we went to St. Lawrence Church in Stangelville and talked to the priest, who was a priest, elderly priest at the time. And he says, you can't be baptized Catholic because you are already baptized. You are baptized once, but he said, I can give you the blessing and you will become Catholic Christians. And that's what happened. And we were blessed by the priest, and my brother and I were proclaimed Catholics. And that's where I actually joined the church of St. Lawrence. The St. Lawrence Church, like you said, was a historical building, which has been on the register now lately, within the last few years. And I was involved with the church quite a bit. You know, I always thought I had to do something. I was a server. Um, I served daily mass there. I had to take my bicycle when I was in 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, paddle my bicycle, which was a mile to Stanglesville, served the mass, and of course, pedal my bike back home. And then it got to be with the choir director, which sang, always had to come and sing on morning mass. And she got kind of say, hey, can you sing? Well, yeah, I can sing. Well, why don't you sing at the morning mass? So every morning, every morning when I wasn't serving, I was singing. I stood in the back. The chapel was very small. You could only hold about maybe 20 people in there. But there would be the same people that came to church every day, the same elderly women, you know, and they always enjoyed me singing, you know. And I would sing Latin songs. I never knew what they meant. Hanus, Andrelli, and things like that, and O Sanctissima, and I sang the same songs every day, every day. And up until the time when we had another boy, his name was Jim, says, or he said, I wouldn't mind singing with you. So him and I both sang. We would both go on one in the morning, and we would sing for the daily mass. Other things about St. Lawrence Church that I can remember is one of the priests I've been very helped him a lot. He was a lecturer, and he had to travel, and he traveled giving lectures of Fatima and holy places around all over. He had slide presentation, and a lot of times I would have to take his mother. His mother was elderly. He said, would you take my mother to the doctor? Would you take my mother here and there? And one funny story is that one Sunday after mass, Father came and or he says, I got a lecture this afternoon, and my mother wants to go to the funeral home in Algoma. Would you mind taking her there this afternoon? I said, sure, Father, I'll take her. So I picked her up, and we went to Algoma, and we got downtown, and I said, where do we go? She said, I think the funeral home is downtown. So we went downtown, and yeah, we found the funeral home. We walked in there, and I said, what do you want me to do? Well, you just come with me. Just come with me. So I went with her, and she looks, and she's looking at the coffin, and she said, this isn't the one. I said, what do you mean? Well, this isn't the guy. Well, I said, are you sure this is the funeral home? Well, she says, yeah. I said, I asked the undertaker, is there another funeral home? She said, yeah, there's one on the hill. So we jumped in the car and we went up on the hill, and we discovered that there was a person that she was actually came to see. But he was Lutheran, and the funeral was at the Lutheran church. The service was at the Lutheran church, and she was a nice old lady, but very strict. She says, don't you dare kneel or make the sign of the cross. And don't you say and don't you sing. She said, because it was a Lutheran church. I said, okay, Grandma. That's the way it was. Just a funny story I always remember.
Was there like any other important locations that were like very important to you while you were growing up?
Occasions or locations?
Locations.
Important to me?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh boy. Important. Well, in school in sixth grade, I started music. I started learning the clarinet. I took music lessons from the high school teacher and once a week. And of course, music has been a big thing in my life. There are many occasions that have occurred that involved music. Uh, After I graduated from high school, I was an ad in the paper that the Green Bay Packer band was looking for a clarinet player. So I went and I applied, and I had to go to the musicians union hall and had an appointment. And the director there, who was Wilmer Burke at the time, looked at me, and of course I was nicely dressed. And he says, "You look good." He says, uh, uh, "Get out your horn." So I got my horn out, and he says gave me a piece of music. It was the Washington Post. Da 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 da. And I played. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. And he says, "Is that your car out there?" I says, "Yeah." I'm looking at it on my bulletin board now. I had a 51 Chev four-door coupe Chevrolet. And I had, of course, I always was proud of my cars and I was proud. Boy, he said, "You keep that thing in nice shape." He said, "I know you're a nice guy. You look good. Your car looks good. You're hired." He says, "Come to rehearsal next week." So the next week I was to rehearsal and I started playing back in 1957. I started playing with the Green Bay Packer band, and I had a lot of nice occasions with that. And I played with the band for 9 years, and I played for the last Packer game at City Stadium. City Stadium was the whole football field of Green Bay East High School, which is the football field for the school now. That was City Stadium. Going to the games, of course, we got in for nothing, and I playing in the band. We were called the Green Bay Packer Lumberjack Band at that time. And the Lumberjack Band wore big parkas. I have some pictures here that I'm going to show. Well, here's one right here. How do we do that? Here. That was a Green Bay Packer Lumberjack Band. And we wore parkas, green caps. And of course, they were all very heavy because we were called lumberjacks. So after playing that first game at Packer Stadium, of course, they built a new stadium, which was on the west side of town. And the next game was at the new stadium, which they called City Stadium. And when we got there, this is the way we looked. We were right on the field. You can kind of see it, Packer band, their lumberjacks. We were right on the field. Now just take a look at the crowd. That's all the higher they went compared to today, the way it is. I mean, it was only, I think the capacity was 30,000 something. Of course, today it's 70,000.
Mhm.
So I stayed with that band for 9 years, up until the time that the band was kind of dissolved. And of course, I had, being on the field like that, I was pretty well close to some of the female players, uh, Jimmy Taylor, Bart Starr, a few of them. Of course, Vincent Lombardi. Vince Lombardi would be parading in front of us most of the time and hollering at the players. So it was kind of interesting. So those occasions I'll always remember.
Since you mentioned like that the Packer band was dissolved, do you remember like why they did that?
Why they did it, I don't know. I think it's because of they didn't think everything was canned. You know, the music was canned, and really to play the band again, it really didn't make any sense. So they just did this is no more Packer band. And what some of the guys did on Sundays of the games, they would get together and they would march. In fact, that's what they do now. is that they march around the parking lot and they play. There's maybe about 5, 6 people. Of course, they're different people than when I was in the Packer band, but they consider themselves the Packer band, and they played around the parking lot and before the game. Uh, let's see. I was just thinking about. Yeah, that's about it. It's just why they dissolved themselves. I don't know. When I was in the Packer band, they played about uh, um, 7, 8, 9 games, and only 3 or 4 games were played in Green Bay, and half the games were played in Milwaukee, at the Milwaukee County Stadium. That was the old stadium now, Milwaukee County Stadium. And we would have to bus down to Milwaukee on Sunday morning, and then, of course, get set up in the stadium there and play the game, and then bus by ourselves back to Green Bay. And we were invited. Packer band was invited. I don't know, not by Chicago Bears, by the Green Bay Packers. We were invited to go down to Chicago and and participate on the field playing for a Bear game. And incidentally, the Bears lost that game. It was kind of us, I think. I don't know what could have been. So yeah, that's some of the highlights. Some big highlights was uh, being on the field. You don't know the feeling that a person gets when he's on the field and you got 50, 60,000 people all around you, and uh, you play the national anthem, and then the Packers come running out. It's kind of a real good feeling, real good feeling. Mhm.
And also, I just wanted to ask, like, what kind of music did you guys play? Was it like marching music or like
Mainly,
there a specific, was there like a Packer song that you guys played?
there was the Packer song, da 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 da. That was the Packer song. We played it with ASCAP, which was the organization for publishing music. Uh, you had to always send in uh, a, a schedule of what you were going to play. Every week you had to send that to ASCAP, and so it could be cleared. And the Packer song, of course, was played. You always had to say how many times you were going to play the Packer song. A lot of times you didn't know. All depends how many kickoffs there were. So every time it was a kickoff, you played a Packer song. Then all the other music that we would have played probably was marches, just mainly all marches that we would play at during the quarter, during a timeout, or what is that? And we would play a march or cut off a march. You would have, no matter how much of it you played, that's the only time you could play it. You can say, well, let's start here. No, you can't. Let's start over. No, you can't, because you played it, you started, and you're all registered by ASCAP. You can't do that. You had to pay a fee of so much. I don't know what it was. Incidentally, I was looking up some stuff here the other day, and I found my check receipt for the Green Bay Packer band, and I played, I don't know what it was, 9 games, maybe 10, 15 rehearsals. Uh, and so the receipt was for $160. You get someone to play today that much for $160. It's a little bit different. Things are different today. Yeah.
And also, I just want to ask, like, how you mentioned you were always so close to the players and whatnot. Did you ever get to like meet any of those guys or like meet Lombardi or no?
No, just by seeing them on the field, being close to them on the field, because they're right next to the Packer bench, close to it. And that's the only time we've seen them. Well, you see Nitschke and Taylor and Horning, Lombardi, all these big guys, Kostelnik, and how many. And to this day, yet when I watch the Packers, I kind of think, well, that was to be Horning's number. That used to be Bart Starr's number. And so I still think them as being the 1958 through 19 whatever, as the old Green Bay Packers. It's just, Yeah. So I haven't never really personally met anybody. Yeah, we entertained the Green Bay Packer band they had a big thing down at the Elks Club in Green Bay when I was with the band, and they had all these dignitaries from the National Football League. Ray Scott was even there. He was the Packer announcer, and all these dignitaries that had anything to do with the Packers, they were there, and they would show. We had to do a performance uh, where they showed a film of the Packers, and in places when this came on, when a kickoff came on, the Packer band had to play the Packer song and so on and so forth, which was kind of neat. And we got to meet, not to meet, but to see a lot of these big dignitaries, commissioner, whatever. I can't give you any names because I don't remember, but it was a big highlight of my Packer band career.
Well, since we're on like the topic of being in the Packer band and how you mentioned that you played in the Ice Bowl, do you want to kind of talk about what that experience was like?
Playing in high school?
Oh, being in playing in the Ice Bowl.
Oh, the Ice Bowl. Oh, well, that was quite an experience. As you know, you remember, let's see now, would you have been born during high school? Am I wrong? Oh, okay. Yeah, our children were. Yeah, the Ice Bowl was quite an experience. Get up in the morning, we had to go Packer game. You had to be there at 11 in the morning or so. What are we going to do there? It was blasted cold. It was minus 14 below zero. And when we got there, we had to go on the field. Of course, we were dressed up, trying to stay warm, and most of the people was trying to stay warm. And the director, who was Wilmer Burke at that time, told us, Claire, read all your reed players, don't even take your horns out because they're just going to freeze up. All we want is the trombone players, the trumpet players, and the baritone players. You get your horns out. We have alcohol here to put on your mouthpieces so you don't freeze to your lips. And all you're going to have to do is play the national anthem, Star Spangled Banner. So when the game started, we played the Star Spangled Banner, and that was it for us guys. But we stayed on the field. We didn't do any playing after that. And as the game went on, it was close. It was against the Dallas Cowboys at that time, and Bart Starr was the quarterback. And it came down. It came down to the last 17 seconds of the game, which was right in front of us. The Packers had the ball on the 1 yard line, and they had to score in order to win. And Lombardi calls a timeout, and he goes and converses with Bart Starr, the quarterback, and he come back on the field. What was the play that beat him? It was anybody know? You know?
QB sneak.
A quarterback sneak. Bart Starr never quarterback sneak before. They had a quarterback sneak, and he got in for the touchdown, and they beat the Dallas Cowboys, I think, 26-17. So that was the game. Of course, then the goalposts have to come down, and that you had to be careful so you don't get hit in the head someplace. And all the people are on the field, and the Packers won Super Bowl and blah blah, and the goalposts came down, and that was the story of the Ice Bowl. It was 14 below zero, and lots of people were there. Stadium was full. Yeah, Packer fans. Yeah.
All right, so since we covered like a lot of your like musical career like as a Packer band, do you want to like just tell us why you wanted to play music and like why you started in 6th grade? Like what led you to want to do that?
Yeah, I can tell you. I think biggest part of it was my nationality. I was Czech, Bohemian, and that was a big part of music. You know, when my dad had this bar. We had an old Wurlitzer Model 48 jukebox, which played the big 78 records and had 20, the selection was 24. And of course, we lived upstairs. My brother and I lived upstairs. And on weekends, that's all you heard was the same record being played over, the same records being played over. It was all Czech music. It was all in the Oompa style of music or the polka style of music. And I kind of think that got into my blood. And you know, I want to do that. I want to play that type of music. So uh, uh, I said, I want to play the clarinet. And when our music teacher from high school came to the grade school signing up, he kind of looked at you and looked at your lips. And, yeah, you'd make a good clarinet player. So, okay, that's what I played. My brother was also a musician. He played trumpet. And so we had a trumpet and clarinet uh, uh, family in our family. And I think that's why I wanted to play music, is because I've heard so much of it that I want to do that. And I did that now for 64 years. Um, I had my own band. I played with a lot of bands in the area. They were all Czech, would you say Czech bands? Some weren't Czech bands, but they played the same style of music as we all did. And I had my own band for 11 years. And uh, that was my band. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yep.
Yeah, it was called the OK Dance Band. And that's how it all kind of ended right now for me. I've been playing for 64 years with the pandemic and so on. And so the virus, band business has kind of dwindled a little bit. I don't have a band anymore. I still have my instruments. Uh, and who knows what happened or what will happen. Mhm. I gotta just tell you, I also belong to a club. We never talked about clubs, but I belong to the Wisconsin Czech Choraleers, which is a singing group that sings all the old time Czech music, polkas, waltzes in Czech. Everything is in Czech. And I've been the director of that group for the last 7 or 8 years. And I can just show you a picture of Karen and I in our Czech gowns. And but now that is dissolving too because of the pandemic. You can't see. You can see all the girls in their Czech attire. Well, anyway, what was I going to say now? I was talking about the Czech Warriors as an organization that I belong to. Yeah.
Just to clear up, how many bands were you actually like a part of throughout your musical career? Because I know you mentioned the OK band and the Packer band. Were like there any other bands you played in?
Well, the Czech Choraleers wasn't a band, but it was a musical instrument, a musical organization. The other band was the Hamilton band, which was out of Twivers, Wisconsin. I played in there for a year or two, and that was a concert band that played their concerts on Thursday nights during the summer. So every Thursday night we had a concert in the gazebo in the main park in Twivers. Other bands that I played with is some of the local bands. There were a lot of local bands that I played with. Who was that, Karen? Yeah, a lot of the bands would need help out. So you would, if they needed a extra player or a different player, clarinet player or trumpet player, we would go out and help them out and substitute for that. So there's mostly a lot of bands that I played with. A lot of bands you would never recognize. But I played with a lot of the local bands, and the bands that needed help. Mhm.
And did you ever write any of your music or no?
Yes, I did. I wrote a few on my own. Never, never being good at it, but I got by. I mean, in my band, in my own personal band, I had a arranger, Mike, whose name was Mike, very good writer. And he would, if I would write a music, he would take it home and he would circle the mistakes I made, or what it should be, or what it shouldn't be, and that's the way I got by. Uh, but never in my library. It consists of 500, about 500 different tunes and songs, and I got a modern library that has the same amount in. So I have a lot of music someday that Ben is going to inherit. Ben, you're going to have to start a band.
I don't know. I don't know.
It'll get you through school.
Yeah, I would.
So is there like anything else you'd like want to tell us about like your music career?
Oh, music career. No, I think we covered that
Yeah.
pretty much. Pretty much so. Yeah. I think some of the questions were that you had given me what I did in high school, Merle, intramural play, and of course I was music was a big thing in high school. I played first clarinet in a concert band, and I was director of the pep band. Uh, I would have sooner played in the pep band, but the music said, "Or you take over the pep band." So for basketball games and football games, I was the director of the pep band. So and stuff like that. Yeah. How we doing?
Doing good. So, um, in high school. I guess like on the topic of high school, is that where you like met grandma or no?
I'm afraid so. No, I don't mean that. No, that's where we met. She was also a band member. She played alto sax, so we had, you know, we were able to see each other often in school. And we went to, of course, concerts and then the parades that we had to play and all. And then we got together and she was a junior, I was a senior. And our friendship continued out of school and eventually we were married. 1960, I graduated in 57. She graduated in 58 and we were married in 1960. And in fact, uh, we were married on May 14th, which is coming up. May 14th, we'll be married 61 years. Mhm.
So coming out of like high school, did you ever like want to like maybe attend college, or were you like set on just working right out of high school?
Well, you know, I guess we just didn't have the opportunity to go to college. I suppose if we really wanted to, I guess what held me back from going to college was my music again. Because a junior in high school, I was playing with bands already, you know, and I was making money and I played almost every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you know, and I was playing on the average of maybe, well, I don't know how many jobs a year, but anyway, between playing and then getting a job, we were able to get a job very easily. I got a job at Hamilton Manufacturing Company, which was a manufacturer of clothes dryers, and I worked there for 6 months. So then, of course, my uncle being in construction, he got me into construction. I started working for a construction company by driving dump truck. Started out on dump truck and then eventually got into uh, working with heavy equipment and ready mix plants and stuff like that, and eventually got into the union, got placed on different jobs, and that's how it all started for me. It started from uh, playing in the band, not thinking of ever going to college. I probably, if I had to do it over again, I probably would. I think all you boys should do it. Uh, and that's just the way it ended up with me, working in construction. I worked in construction for, been in union for over 50 some years.
Well, being in a union, you might not be able to answer this question, but were you aware of like who Jimmy Hoffa was?
Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa was the president of the Teamsters union. He got in a little trouble, but knowing about him, I didn't belong to, I drove truck. I was in the Teamsters union for about 6 months, but then when I got into construction field, I had to join the operators engineers. So I know very little about Jimmy Hoffa, very little.
Okay. Um, I guess to transition into like your adult life, since we've pretty much covered your work life, you were just working in construction and all that.
Yeah,
When did you start a family? When did you decide to do that?
well, our first child was born in 61. Yeah, 61. We had a girl and then a boy, two girls and then two boys. Uh, Family life was a little hectic because I was gone mostly on weekends playing dance jobs. I was all right during the day, but you get kind of tired, So sometimes you didn't have the ambition to do anything. But we managed. We lived. We were able to buy our own home, and after uh, 2 years of marriage, we bought our own home, and the kids in the Alloway area here. We've been, like I said, we've been in this area for some odd 59 years. And of course, the kids went to St. Matthew's grade school, and then they went on to Abbott Pennings and St. Joseph's Academy, which is Notre Dame Academy now. It was St. Joseph's all girls school, and Abbott Pennings was all boys school, like your school now. And of course, through high school, we always had fun. Jeff was my youngest boy. He was the last one. He was in the last class to graduate from Abbott Pennings, and he was quite a guy. Uh, he would he would do things that I wouldn't have done. But I mean, he he would pull the homecoming parade float, me not even knowing it. Daddy says, we're gonna have our parade float tonight, our homecoming. He says, you have to drive. I said, what do you mean I gotta drive? Well, we got our truck in there. We had an old GMC pickup truck. So he had that hooked to the trailer, so I had to drive. Yeah, he had lights on it. He had everything lit up. And I said, well, that's a surprise to me. First time I ever was in a homecoming day parade. So I had to drive it around a football field. But all things like that he would do. And of course, my other son, Tom, who went to Pennings, he was more of course, they both were in sports, basketball and football. And uh, we just had a lot of memories, just a lot of memories with the boys and with the girls being at St. Joe's Academy, just a lot of memories. I I like to talk about a neighbor of ours in Stangesville that was in the Army of World War II. Uh, he was commissioned as a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. Uh, and the thing I like to bring him up is because he was a neighbor. He only lived a half a mile from us. His name was Lieutenant Colonel Konop. It was a different Konop family, not related, but very well related in the area that we lived, because Konops are Konops. We had four different Konop families. My dad's family, Matt Konop's family, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Konop's family, and there's also a butcher shop in Stangelville. It's called Konop's Meat Market, which is very famous for what they do. And that was another family. And then there was another farmer that was named Konop. So there was actually four Konops that were all involved, and we always tried to look through the heritage and back and see how we were all related. And if you go back far enough, I think we all were related. Well, anyway, Matt Konop was in the Battle of the Bulge, and uh, he, as he was trying to liberate the Czechs from the Nazis, they went through a lot of these towns, and one of the towns they went through was Domažlice, was in the Czech Republic. And he was when he came into this town, the people in the town found out that he could speak Czech. And they thought, boy, he is a native from our town and he can speak Czech and he's a lieutenant colonel. He's a famous person. And they made him a famous person. And they called him the Forgotten Hero. And to this day, they still celebrate that liberation of Domažlice from the Nazis. And every year they have a parade and he's honored. He wrote his biography, or his description of what he went through, and it was laying for about 20 years and nobody ever looked at it. Finally, his grandson, who was Pat DeWayne, found it and started reading it and said, oh my God, he says, I have to let the people know what Matt Konop was. And he goes around the country giving lectures on his grandfather and his experiences in the Battle of the Bulge and his experiences in the Army as a lieutenant colonel. He passed away in I think it was 1983 or maybe later, and his remains are in the cemetery in Twitter. So he came back home, and the farm is still there. Farm buildings are there, but not being farmed. Buildings aren't being used. And he had a brother that lived on the farm, and his brother and wife have passed away since. And that's just something that goes into history.
So is there like anything else you like remember about World War II or anything like that?
Well, there's World War II, of course, there's a lot of things that came up in my lifetime. Korean War. The Korean War was against the North Vietnam and South Vietnam. South Vietnam was our ally, so in 1960, we kind of got involved in the war. But the Korean War was kind of before my time, really. I was just in grade school at that time. I don't remember much of it, but I mean, it was kind of a different kind of war, probably a war that shouldn't have been. But it was against the Viet Cong of North Korea and liberated people of South Vietnam. I don't think anybody ever won, as to it. And then, of course, we had the Vietnam War. Vietnam War was when I was in school and in high school, and that was another war that a lot of the guys that I know, I never was drafted, I never was in service, but a lot of the fellows that I worked with have been in service, and they had served in the Vietnam War, and they consider that as a wasted war also. There's a lot of our army people, personnel that got killed, and there was never no love for the Viet Cong. And I think to this day, when I talk to these people, they don't talk very, very highly of the Viet Cong. Not because they were fighting with them, but more or less fighting against them. And there's just no love for them. I know I worked with one guy one fellow, and what happened, he would always knock down the Vietnamese people. And what happened, the company hired a Vietnamese boy, not a boy, a gentleman, young fellow, to work. And I tell you, at times I thought maybe this Roger was going to run him over or something, because he just had no love. Another thing that was kind of a highlight was not a highlight, but a historical thing that happened was the 9/11. Now, that was when a plane hit the Twin Towers, and that's when several people got killed, thousands, and 25,000 people that were injured. At that time, I was retired. Yeah, I was retired and working a part-time job. I drove minivan, picking up handicapped people and taking them to the doctor. I can remember the day it happened. It happened in the morning, about eight something in the morning, where this plane hit the Twin Towers, and of course, a lot of destruction and billions of dollars of destruction, and people killed, lost a lot of lives, and I think some of those people are still suffering from that episode that took place on that day, September 11th, 2002, I think it was 2002 that happened. So that was a big historical thing that had happened in my lifetime. I hope there are many more, but it's some of them, those things to remember, and all these people that were killed at the 9/11 massacre, to be remembered, always remembered every year.
Do you have any like other, well, do you have like a reaction to like the JFK assassination or anything like that occurred in the 50s, 60s
Oh,
timeline?
of course I do. I always thought John F. Kennedy was an excellent president. I always liked him. I think for one of the reasons because he was Catholic. And I think a lot of the things that he done he had a lot of thought into what he was doing, a lot of decision making and me. And when he was assassinated, I think the country were in remorse. Why did it happen? How did it happen? And who's behind it, and so on. And I felt the same way. I think I was in my working days at that time, and a lot of people thought, what's going to happen now? I think Lyndon Johnson was the vice president, wasn't he? Lyndon Johnson became president, and we thought, oh boy, what's going to happen now? Where's our country going? And but with the faith in God and through prayer and lots of people, I think the country got straightened out, and we were able to get over the catastrophe that had happened, and wishing that it would have never happened, but that's life. Mm-hmm.
I guess just one final question, like to kind of throw it back to your time with the Packers. Do you remember when Vince Lombardi left, and like, do you know how that impacted like the fans and whatnot, and how it impacted you?
Well, I guess it always happens, doesn't it? Vince Lombardi, uh, Mike Holmgren, and they stay for a few years, and always seems like things look rosier on the other side of the fence, or what to say. It looks greener on the other side of the fence. And I think that's what happens sometimes with people. You can look at yourself in your own life, why am I doing this? Or why am I doing that? It looks better on the other side. Maybe I'm gonna try that. Well, then Vince Lombardi did that. He resigned from the Packers and he went to, where'd he go? Kansas? I don't remember. And only for 1 year after that, then he retired, you know. I think that's just life. People just look for something better. And I think the people in Green Bay probably didn't like it. But because after that, the football team kind of fell apart. I think Phil Bingston was the coach for a couple of years, and then Bart Starr was the coach after that, and that didn't go over too good. And then he had a big rebuilding program. And then since then, Mike Holgram came in and built up a team, and we had another Super Bowl team after that. So that's just the way it is, you know. It's the way life is. Some people can't hang on forever. The end always has to come. Mhm.
Do you have any final questions for Gabe?
No, I think everything was covered.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Konop, for
Just a minute.
oh, what are you looking for now?
Yeah, I found it.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Konop, Mr. Orville Konop, for taking time out of your day to do this for us. It was a pleasure to hear all your stories and learn about your life and reactions to certain events that occurred and like how like what your time was like being for the Packers, and it was just a pleasure to hear it all. So thank you.
Thank you
Well,
so
I think your boys were more interested in the Packers and of all those old stories from way back when. They're actually, those Packers stories are a lot different then than what they are today. You know, more or less, it's when you look at the Packers, and when those players played years ago, they played to play. They played because they wanted to play. Today, what does the player do? He plays for the money. You know, big money, millions, millions. You know, and actually, are they really, really putting out for what they get paid for? You know, and I'm just saying that. That's my personal opinion. Well, I enjoyed both you boys, Gabe and Ben, and I hope I inspired you a little bit in one way or another. And so be good and enjoy your time at school.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye bye.
How do we pause recording?